Climate tipping points, the points of no return, after which major components of Earth's climate will begin to irreversibly break down, could be triggered by temperatures much lower than scientists previously thought, with some tipping points potentially already underway achieved. There are also many more potential tipping points than scientists have previously identified, according to a new study. In this video, I present to you the news in detail. Now, without any further delay, let's get into the video. So, what exactly is the tipping point, and why should we be concerned? In climatology, a tipping point is defined as an increase in temperature, past which a localized climate system or head element, such as the Amazon rainforest or the Greenland ice sheet, begins to decline irreversibly. Once a tipping point has been reached, that tipping element will experience runaway effects that will essentially doom it forever, even if global temperatures drop below the tipping point. The idea of climate tipping points first emerged in a 2008 paper published in the journal PNAS, when researchers identified 9 key elements that could reach this threshold due to human-caused climate change. In the new study, which was published in September, a team of researchers re-evaluated data from more than 200 articles published since 2008 on the subject of global warming. They found that there are now 16 major tipping points, and almost all of them could reach a point where there is no turning back if global warming keeps going above 1.5 degrees Celsius. That is 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit above pre-industrial levels. The study authors said in a statement that Earth has already warmed more than 2 degrees Fahrenheit, 1.1 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, and if current warming trends continue, is on track to reach between 3.6 and 5.4 degrees Fahrenheit, 2 and 3 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. This puts Earth on a path to crossing several dangerous tipping points that will be bad for people all over the world. When the researchers conducted their reassessment, they eliminated 2 of the original 9 tipping points due to insufficient evidence, but then identified 9 new ones that had been previously ignored, bringing the total to 16, they reported in the study. In the new study, the researchers calculated the exact temperature at which each tipping element was likely to pass the point of no return. Their analysis revealed that 5 tilt elements, the Greenland and West Antarctic ice sheets, Arctic permafrost, tropical coral reefs, and a major ocean current in the Sea of Labrador, are in the danger zone, meaning they are rapidly approaching their tipping points. The Greenland and West Antarctic ice sheets have already passed their lowest possible tipping points of 1.4 degrees Fahrenheit, 0.8 degrees Celsius, and 1.8 degrees Fahrenheit above pre-industrial times, respectively, which suggests that these 2 systems may already be beyond economics. If global warming exceeds 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit, the remaining 11 tipping points are classified as likely or possible. Triggering weather tipping points will increase the severity and frequency of extreme events such as wildfires. Previous estimates, like the 6th Assessment Report of the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which came out in 3 parts in 2021 and 2022, said that most major tipping points wouldn't happen until the Earth got warmer than 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit, which would give people more time to come up with ways to reduce the effects of climate change and adapt to them. But according to the new study, these tipping points may be closer than expected. One explanation for this accelerated timeline is that researchers now fully understand the interconnectedness of inflection points. Better climate models now show that dropping one tipping point can increase the likelihood of another collapsing. For instance, if the Arctic permafrost melts, because temperatures are going up, it will release more carbon into the air. This will further increase surface temperatures on land and in the oceans, thus accelerating the melting of major ice sheets and stressing coral reefs. In other words, tipping points are stacked like dominoes. Once one falls, the others can quickly follow. Therefore, the research researchers have warned that it is imperative to drastically reduce our greenhouse gas emissions immediately before this irreversible chain reaction begins. To maintain the conditions of life on Earth, protect people from increasing extremes, and allow for stable societies, we must do everything possible to avoid crossing tipping points. But this will not be an easy task. To have a 50% chance of keeping global warming to 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit, greenhouse gas emissions would have to be cut in half by 2030 and reach net zero by 2050. Given the scant progress in combating climate change, this goal may seem unattainable. In fact, in a way, it feels like we're stepping back. In June, a U.S. Supreme Court decision severely limited the federal government's ability to regulate greenhouse gas emissions. However, the study authors argue that it would still be possible to achieve such drastic changes through a different kind of tipping point, the social tipping point. This is a theoretical threshold in public opinion that, once crossed, will force governments and large corporations to take drastic climate action. The scientists said in the statement, "The only problem is that this social tipping point must be reached well before climate tipping points are passed. Otherwise, it will be a little too late." In other news, what do you know about ghost flights? Anyone who works in the airline industry or uses commercial aviation a lot knows that it is expensive to make a plane take off. Apart from the price of the aircraft itself, which is no small thing, it takes a lot of fuel, which is also quite expensive. A trained and qualified crew to operate on the aircraft, spaces for landing, takeoff, and parking at airports, in addition, of course, of passengers to finance this whole operation. Without passengers, it is difficult for an airline to make all this possible and remain economically healthy. However, this is exactly what happens in some airports around the world. The plane takes off and lands empty, without a single passenger. And why is that? Well, the BBC explained part of this contradiction. At many airports, especially in Europe, ghost flights are an inconvenience that airlines have faced for decades. This is because, according to European Union aviation rules, in order to maintain their takeoff and landing spaces, companies need to perform at least 80% of scheduled flights. As a result, many aircraft end up taking to the air with very few passengers, or in more extreme cases, which became common during the pandemic, without a miserable paying soul. For the passengers, these flights can be a wonder. After all, flying with a few unoccupied seats next to you is more comfortable. For some lucky ones, it's even possible to lie down in a row of seats. For companies, these flights bring an inconvenient cost, but are already standardized by decades of application. As for the climate, ghost flights are one of the stupidest things that aviation could do. This is because even with a lower weight, the aircraft in flight continues to burn tons and tons of aviation kerosene, a fossil fuel whose burning contributes to global warming. What next? Well, climate crisis could leave areas in the Middle East uninhabitable. Study predicts millions of people living in the Middle East and Eastern Mediterranean could suffer from the devastating effects of climate change in the coming decades, with some locations becoming virtually uninhabitable if the Earth's average temperature continues to rise. The conclusion is from a study released by the Research Center for Climate and Atmosphere of the Cyprus Institute, with support from the Max Planck Institute for Chemistry in Germany. According to the analysis, these regions could experience average warming of up to 5 degrees Celsius by the end of this century in a business-as-usual carbon emissions scenario. A warming of this magnitude could be reflected in a sharp reduction in annual precipitation levels, impacting regions that already historically live with drier climatic conditions. This can make the supply of water even more scarce, putting pressure on populations that depend on the few available sources. Another impact lies in food security, as arable areas used for millennia by humanity, such as the Nile River Delta, may become more restricted to food cultivation. This would imply serious challenges for coastal infrastructure and agriculture, and could lead to the salinization of coastal coastal aquifers. Sometime last week, the World Meteorological Organization, WMO, warned that in 2022, we may have the third consecutive episode of the La Niña meteorological phenomenon, with the temperature cooling in the central portion of the Pacific Ocean. If this is confirmed, it will be the first time in this century, which should cause changes in the climate in several regions of the globe, including South America. Climatologist Alfredo Alpio-Costa from Instituto Antartico Argentino explained to the BBC that the effects of La Niña on the world are very varied. In eastern Argentina, southern Brazil, and Uruguay, it produces drought. However, in northeastern Brazil, northern Australia, and Southeast Asia, it is the opposite, with increased rainfall. And parts of China, India, and Japan, in addition to western Canada and southern Alaska, USA, end up affected by lower temperatures than expected. So, that concludes today's video. If you found the video helpful, give us a thumbs up, and don't forget to share the video with your friends and family. Thanks for watching. See you next time.